I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like I'm on top of the world.
Disclaimer, you will not be transported to the top of the world. In the unlikely event you find yourself at the Arctic Circle, seek shelter from the elements immediately to avoid frostbite and or hypothermia. Geico will not be responsible if you find yourself in a cave or crevasse with a lonely abominable snowman, who in all likelihood will force you to play games including but not limited to Go Fish, charades, Chinese checkers, or his personal favorite, Red Rover, send Yeti on over. Geico is not liable for any damages, either physical or emotional.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Helping you get set for the start of your work week for most of you in 2018. Glad you're with us on this Tuesday morning. Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. Presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Trey Wingo and Mike Golic here. Trevor Matich is in studio with us here. He knows what it takes to be a national champion in college and also knows what it means to play a tight end in the NFL. We'll get to all of that in a minute. You have something you want to address.
Yeah, it's got to be done. We just finished our last, for those we talked about from Mike and Mike with Green and I into this show, what we've done for the last couple of years, we have our DraftKings contest that Trey jumped into this year. So
which I regret immediately.
There were 11 people. That was my whole family, plus my son Jake's wife, Jenny, so that's 6. You were 7. Greeny and his wife, Stacy, were 8 and 9. Cousin Eddie, who nobody knows, and you don't want to know Cousin Eddie, quite honestly.
All right.
And then Darius Rucker made 11. We're in it. And Megan Judge made up a here at ESPN Radio, made up a fantasy football championship belt.
Mm-hmm. So
what did I say wrong? What are you laughing at me for? Did I say something?
No, we're just laughing at you. Don't worry about that.
My wife won. This is the belt.
There's the belt. For those of you that aren't watching, it is very thick and has lots of jewels and football helmets.
We'll get a picture of this and we'll put it up on social media so the people on radio can see this. But yeah, my wife won this thing. My wife, Chris, is the winner. You were last week. Good job out of you.
Yeah, well, I stopped caring about 12 weeks ago.
Well, listen, don't give me that excuse. You care or not care,
be honest.
You lost.
Yeah, that's fair.
She won, so I'll take the belt home. I'm sure she'll put it on and take a picture of it and rub it into all of us. She said she is available to come on the show for fantasy. I said 10:05 every day she can come on.
10:05?
Yeah, that didn't go over well.
That time slot is open.
It is open.
It is. So congratulations to Chris. Congratulations to the belt, and thanks to Megan Judge for making that. And you will revel in that misery
it's a nice belt,
for a year.
I will.
It's certainly a belt. There's no question about it. It is definitively a belt that has some championship bling on it. Trevor Matich, championship bling. Again, national champion in college. A first-round pick, right? 17th?
Yes, sir. 28th. That was the last pick in the first round.
I was off by 11. But you were in the first round.
Yes, sir.
That's
okay,
all
rub
that
it
matters.
in. I was 255. Okay, whatever.
I was 4,643 for the last 20 years. So congratulations to you, Trevor. Okay, obviously we saw 2 completely different games in the semifinals. We saw a slugfest that was really all about defense between Alabama and Clemson. And while technically the Georgia defense played much better in the second half, we saw a shootout between Georgia and Oklahoma. As you were watching that Rose Bowl, I think the reactions on Twitter and to a lot of people seeing it were like, this is one of the greatest games we've ever seen. What was your impression of the quality of football between those 2 schools?
It was phenomenal because you're right. You're talking about a slugfest. And Mike Tyson said that every fighter's got a plan until he gets hit in the mouth. And both of these teams hit the other in the mouth in the way that they do it. And I thought it was interesting at the end of the first half when Oklahoma looked like they were going to run away with this game. Halftime, I was thinking, you know something? Georgia's averaging 16.5 yards per carry, and they're trailing. And I thought, if
that was insane, right?
If Oklahoma didn't get that fixed, I thought that running game of Georgia was going to carry the day in the second half. And lo and behold, hitting somebody in the face still works in 2017 and 2018.
I enjoyed the entertainment, but as a former defensive player, I rarely enjoy a 54-48 game as much.
You just need to, that's why there's so much joy in your life that you're missing out on.
I know. The squib kick at the end of the half, as I said, I would never squib kick in my life. I would rather do that high, short kick if you don't want to kick to the return man, but gave a little momentum to Georgia. But those 2 big stops by Georgia coming out in the third quarter, 3 and out, 2 punts by Oklahoma, something we didn't see in the first half, I definitely thought was the momentum changer. Thought they switched up the coverage, got more pressure on Baker Mayfield in the second half, made him throw to more specific spots, and he struggled doing it. No doubt about it.
What's the advantage of having a Saban disciple as your head coach, Kirby Smart, of Georgia? Because in the first half, it looked like the defensive plan was to kind of mush rush, kind of contain Mayfield, and don't let him break out. And he would go touchdown, field goal. So in the second half, they came out and said, well, that's not working.
Yeah.
How about plan B? And plan B was attack, be aggressive. Don't worry about containing him. Let's go hit the guy. And then they were more aggressive on the coverage, like you said as well.
5 sacks through the first 3 quarters.
Right. And so I think that aggression, that adjustment to really go after him instead of trying to contain him made all the difference for Georgia's defense. And Mike, you must have loved that.
Oh, I did. Listen, I said it before the game when we started talking about, or whenever we had to play against a mobile quarterback. I hated the fact of any coach that told a really good defensive line, hey, let's be disciplined. Let's stay in our lanes. Let's make sure we don't go up too far. I'd be like, hell no. Go rush the quarterback.
Right.
Go do your thing. You know what? Go do what made you a great defensive line and getting sacks.
Now, as an offensive lineman, which of those do you think I would prefer if I face you across the line?
What you would rather I'm more disciplined.
I want you to be disciplined.
Absolutely.
I want you to be gap sound.
I'm staying in my gap. I'm not going deeper than the quarterback. Right. I'm staying in the B gap and the other D tackles in the A gap where we're supposed to be. Makes it easier for you guys.
Well, I feel like this is a bastardization of the Bill Cowher soundbite from NFL Films talking to Greg Lloyd. And Greg Lloyd's taking all these things and Bill's going, rush the quarterback.
Yeah.
Rush the quarterback. Rush the quarterback.
And that's what they did. Yeah. That's the thing. When they got to the second half and they just started just going after the guy and didn't try to slow down. I watched those offensive linemen and you could tell that they were thinking what you were thinking. It was like, oh no, look at this change. As an offensive lineman, what happens is if you're playing disciplined football, if it looks bad, it doesn't embarrass me. We just don't gain, we gain 2 yards, right? If you're coming after the quarterback, if you're busting those gaps and you're going with your hair on fire, it embarrasses me and it injures my quarterback.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's just a whole different world, and that's exactly what Georgia did. It was all about punching the other guy in the mouth in a different way.
Trevor Matich with us, our college football analyst, joining us in studio, giving us the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. So that was the Georgia-Oklahoma game. And then we just saw that for lack of a better term, that python that is Alabama defense. And there's been a lot of talk this entire season. Yeah, this defense is good. They're not as good as some of the other defenses we've seen for Alabama, and they did. But boy, I tell you what, they squeezed the life out of Clemson from the first series, and they never let go.
Yeah, the anaconda defense. And that's how they do it. It's like an anaconda. Anaconda wraps itself around a little sheep. And the little sheep in the beginning thinks, well, it's not so bad. I think I might be able to wiggle out of this. And then little by little, he just squeezes and suffocates until it's just clear to everybody that little sheep didn't have a chance from the first instant. And that's what Bama got back to in this one. A lot of it had to do with attitude, though, because they felt disrespected. I don't think they were. They didn't win their own conference. So when people talked about them not having won their own conference and maybe not being worthy of the playoff, that shouldn't be a sign of disrespect to them. That's just fair evaluation of what the committee does. But you know this, Mike, that football players will take disrespect in anything they need to in order to feel disrespected. We want to feel disrespected. It makes us happy to feel disrespected. And Bama came out there wanting to, well, back to the same thing, a fight. To them, this wasn't a football game. Clemson was playing a football game. Alabama was in a fight. And Clemson didn't realize it until it was too late.
You know, every team looks to get a chip on their shoulder, and Alabama's a hard team to find to put a chip on their shoulder because they're usually at the top of the mountain, but they found a way to do that. And let's make no mistake, both these defenses were great. It's not like the juggernaut Alabama, you know, they had a pick six go one way, and they had another pick that put them right in scoring position. So that Clemson defense, especially that D-line, which led the FBS in sacks, is incredible as well. But I thought this, for those that were expecting the last 2 years where Clemson went over 500 yards each year, put up a ton of points, you had no Deshaun Watson, you had no Mike Williams, you had no Wade Gallman. You had no big-time players especially against a team like Alabama. So it didn't shock me as much when Clemson wasn't going to put up a lot of points or a lot of yards. But 188 total yards and just 6 points. I did expect a little more than that, which just goes to show, man, that defense is just, and I think that Nick used the right word, ferocious. They were a ferocious defense. They were hungry. Call it the anaconda. I call it the picket fence. They're so well disciplined. They have such great on the running plays, have your space, don't get burned anywhere, and then when they need to attack, they attack with such great athletic ability.
If somebody called your defense a picket fence, would you think that was a compliment?
Well,
it doesn't sound great.
You would have to explain. Once you explain it, it is meant as a compliment.
Wherever the pressure is.
No. Picket fence meaning the fence posts are right where they need to be, and that's where, as a defense, you're where you need to be. You're taking care of your responsibility.
Yeah, but a picket fence is this kind of flimsy
little white thing.
You can step over it or you can walk through it.
I got an offensive guy and trying to explain something to, and a guy that doesn't know anything that I'm trying to explain something to.
Listen, but I own that. Okay?
Yeah,
I own that.
Good point.
Okay.
I just think Anaconda. I think if you ask Alabama, picket fence or Anaconda,
no.
they're all in on Anaconda.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, but you're totally right, though, about the concept. Because I think when you look at Alabama took advantage of the fact that Clemson's quarterback, Kelly Bryant, wasn't all that good at throwing the ball deep down the field with accuracy. So they said, okay, our secondary is really good. We're going to lock down. We're going to dare you to throw it over the top. And in the meantime, we're going to come up and smash you in your running game. And if your plan is to smash Alabama and beat them by imposing your will with the run game, most teams in America, that's not a good plan.
Well, that's going to be Georgia's plan.
Georgia, though, is not most teams in America.
Right. That is true, and that's going to be the difference in this game. They are going to try and do that with two big-time running backs, and quite honestly, a freshman quarterback who's shown some pretty good poise.
Well, I was stunned.
Yeah.
I mean, really stunned. The whole book on Jake Fromm, Georgia's freshman quarterback, true freshman, was that he has talent, but he doesn't have the experience to be able to carry the team if the running game doesn't go. Well, the running game did go in this game.
Yes, it did.
But they didn't rely on the running game early.
No.
They established the pass
First
early.
down pass especially, yeah.
And Jake Fromm was able to, in key moments, in crunch time, at the end of the game, he made key throws accurately under pressure after first having made the right decision. And if he can carry that into the championship game, then he will have something that Clemson did not, which is a credible threat down the field.
Trevor Matich with us in studios. I'm glad you guys brought that up because in light of the whole Baker Mayfield experience, which we saw, and what happened between Alabama and Clemson and the running game for Georgia, it did get sort of lost in the shuffle what Fromm was able to do as a freshman out there on that stage. Now, he had the one play which I'm sure he wants back and will be discussed lengthy in film this week. Just take the sack instead of that pitch where he tried to throw avoid this, which could have been epically disastrous.
It ended up being intentional grounding.
That could have been the game.
And that was the best possible scenario for that play.
You're right.
Intentional grounding. That was the only head scratcher. But he made some. We've talked a little bit about the question marks about Baker at the next level and fitting into some tight windows. He made some throws into some very tight windows in that game that I think will be very impressive to watch his development as a potential NFL quarterback over the next few years.
I would take Baker Mayfield first of the quarterbacks that are available right now. Now that's pending interviews.
You're talking about against Rosen and
Josh
Allen.
Rosen, Josh Allen, Sam Darnold if he comes out, all these folks. And I would need interviews. There's a lot of work left to be done. I want to talk to the guy. I want to understand his work ethic. I want to understand a lot about him. But when you talk about that accuracy, Trey, that's the first thing that I see. I mean, he runs around doing college-y things, Baker Mayfield. He makes people miss. He's exciting. He extends plays. It's really fun. And we're so thrilled watching that as just fans that what gets lost is the fact that then he threw the ball off his back foot, drifting to the side, deep down the field, and it was a pinpoint accurate pass. And he does that all the time.
See, I disagree there. I thought last night when he was asked to throw accurate passes in tight windows, he didn't. He overthrew and he missed receivers. And that actually raised a flag to me of what he's going to have to do at the next level because we know the windows are a lot tighter in the NFL. I thought he missed on some of those plays, especially that last fourth down play, the wheel route, overthrew the back going down the sideline, missed a couple other throws downfield. That actually gave me a little bit of pause because through the year, and that's why I always say, and I know you're not talking about it, don't look at completion percentage and all that stuff. Look at how he throws the ball, where he throws the ball. Does he throw a guy open? Is he waiting for the guy to get open? And in the Big 12 sometimes, a guy is pretty open, pretty wide open at times. It makes the throws a little easier. That's why name me the last Big 12 quarterback that's been successful in the NFL. Don't worry about it. You can't.
Long-term or short-term? I mean, RG3 was Rookie of the Year in 2012, but then you're right.
If that's where you're hanging your hat.
No, I'm just saying.
So that actually gave me a little bit of pause, Trevor, last night because playing against a defense that was more athletically inclined, like an NFL type of defense, where the windows got closed in the second half, I thought he missed a few that he should have had, because I want him to be good in the NFL. I love his demeanor. A lot of people call him cocky, don't like some of the, man, players love to play for him. I think he's a great leader. I think teammates are a magnet toward him, and I love the way he creates, but I worry when he's got to make that throw if he can make that throw.
I see it differently. Now, you're right that he missed a few.
Right.
Yesterday. And one of them, the big one, the obvious one, he tried to throw to his tight end, Mark Andrews.
Yeah.
And that was an adjustment by Georgia.
Right.
Those guys were open in the first half.
They were.
On that particular play, there was a guy right behind Andrews, like he was wearing his shirt.
Yep.
There was a guy in front that Mayfield had to loft the ball over. Mm-hmm. That's why it was thrown a little high. And then there was a guy behind who caught the ball, intercepted the ball. They had him bracketed by 3 guys, basically. Yeah. So to me, that's more of a decision than it is accuracy. But at the same time, what I think NFL coaches or scouts will go back and look at now is not can he throw accurate. I think he's very accurate. The thing is, in the second half, when Georgia took the reins off the defenders and let them go after him, he was under pressure like he had never been really in his career at Oklahoma. More relentlessly and more physical hits at the end of it all to distract him. And I think scouts will go back and look and see, okay, is that a problem now? Yeah. Because I've seen him throw the accuracy. But what we haven't seen is him under physical duress that much.
And he did get phically hit last night.
Listen, he took a knee to the ribs.
To the ribs. That was
a cheap shot.
Well, hold on a minute. He was pushed into him, actually.
Well,
no. I looked at the replays. Number 5 for Georgia. I can't remember his name because I saw the play and I was like, whoa, that was tough. But if you watch it, now you could say maybe he was trying to maneuver his knee. I get that, but he was put. That's why there wasn't a penalty.
You're right that's why there wasn't a penalty.
Yes.
The official was technically correct in a no call. However, that is a push in the mall. It's not a push on a football field. That guy didn't get pushed.
I have absolutely zero issue with what the guy did. I'll be honest. You can call me a
defensive guy? So a quarterback's laying on the ground, and it's okay for a defensive guy to come in after he's on the ground and jam a knee into his ribs.
If it was a penalty, he would have got thrown. Wasn't a penalty.
Wow. See, now this is...
It's just like if you hold and it's not called, was it holding?
Is holding breaking your ribs on the ground?
That's the way it goes.
Well, depends on how strong your grip is.
Physical football game. That's the way it goes, man.
Here's what happens, though.
It's what happens, man.
If the officials need to call things like that, though. This didn't happen in the game last night, but here's what can happen. On offense, and I'm sure it's with you guys as well, if guys are chop blocking in ways that are unethical. Maybe illegal, but unethical.
Right.
But on offense, if we see players like a Vontaze Burfict, for example, perfect example, doing things that we think are going to injure our guys that are outside the realm of football. Good, hard football, fine. Play to the whistle, through the whistle. That's expected. But if you go outside of football, which I think if that knee was intentional, I don't know if it was intentional or not. If it was, that's not football. That's assault.
I agree, but then you're asking those guys to judge intent, which is very difficult.
No, I get that. But I'm talking about now from the perspective of the offensive player.
Right.
If I see that happening and I think my guys are in danger now and the officials don't handle it, I got to handle it.
I agree with that.
That sort of happened for that game. Got a little chippy right after that for a while.
It did.
But you're right. If you're an O-lineman and you saw that, I would expect an O-lineman, if you're going to do that, again, we don't know the intent or not, but if it was, or even if you saw it, quite honestly, if it wasn't intentional, you guys would want to go after the guy anyway.
And then we start doing that, and what do you do as a defender?
Oh, we police as well.
And if the officials don't handle this, then we have to do it, and that is not good entertainment. It's not good football.
I agree with that. So that's the thing. We don't know what happened out there. Did the ref say on the field, hey, it was pushed into him?
The official was technically correct. Trey's right.
Right.
The ref was technically correct. I'm just talking about it not from his perspective, but from my perspective if I'm on that field.
I understand completely what you're saying. Yeah.
All right, so Trevor Matich with us in studio. So it's set now. It's the SEC title game, for lack of a better term, as you have Alabama and Georgia who did not play.
That's really funny.
Who did not play in the place where they play the SEC title game.
Every other conference right now is wailing and gnashing their teeth.
That's right, but then it becomes the question of can Kirby Smart do what really hardly any Nick Saban assistants have been able to do. Find a way to beat that guy. Is he 11-2 against his assistants in his career?
11-0.
11-0.
And he wins him by at least 14 points.
So do we believe, literally when push comes to shove, because that's going to be this game, the Georgia offensive line trying to push apart that picket fence or anaconda defense of Alabama. Because that's Georgia's MO. We want to wear you guys down in the second half, and that's exactly what Alabama's MO is on defense. We want to wear you down on the second half.
Right, and picket fence, of course, a stiff breeze will knock a picket fence down.
No, stop it. Not if it's built correctly.
I think what you're trying to do, Mike, is you're trying to make Alabama feel disrespected for this game, too. So they'll come out ferocious
He's planting
again.
A seed.
Yeah, no. Here's why Kirby Smart, though, the Georgia head coach, can get this thing done. He's got a quarterback that can do what Alabama's quarterback can't, and that's throw the ball more accurately. Now, Jalen Hurts has been there before, and so and Fromm is coming on, but this is the championship game. It's another order of magnitude. Can Fromm do it in this game? Well, he did it in the last one. For goodness sake, maybe he can. And if Fromm can, then that gives Kirby Smart's offense a threat that Alabama's offense doesn't. And Kirby Smart knows what Alabama used to do, what Nick Saban loves to do against opponents whose quarterback can't threaten you down the field in a credible way.
Yeah.
And so he knows exactly how to attack that.
I completely agree. I don't think Georgia can just line up and run the ball against Alabama. I just do not think they can do it. Fromm is going to be the key here. If he can back off that defense by completing some balls down the field, that's going to give him that shot.
And I thought Fromm was the key in this one, and I thought it was going to be the difference in favor of Oklahoma. Fromm proved me wrong.
So in this game,
I agree.
In this game, Alabama is a 4-point favorite right now in the opening line. Mm-hmm. They have been a favorite in 110 of their last 111 games. The only time of that they were the underdog was in 2015 against
Clemson.
Georgia.
Wow. Oh, Georgia.
Georgia.
Wow.
And what happened in that game?
Alabama won 38-10.
I thought you were going to say the only time that they were not favored was when there was a printer mistake and they were scheduled against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
But that is amazing. 110 out of 111, the only time you were underdog by 1 point against Georgia in Athens, and Alabama won 38-10.
So essentially we're going with the Lloyd Christmas philosophy here.
So you're
telling me there's a chance. 1 in a million.
I like it.
What do you think will happen?
3 weeks ago, I said Alabama will win it all.
Yeah.
I also said that if they do win it all, I think Ohio State still should have been in there instead of them, which is a completely different conversation. I would look at it with a little more wavering right now because of two things. One is Fromm's performance yesterday, and because of some of the injuries that Alabama has that we don't know how they are yet. Anthony Jennings, pass rusher, was big. Lester Cotton, offensive lineman. Don't know how those guys are going to be. But I still will stay with Alabama to pull this thing off.
Very quick. Any way would you change the system so a team that has a year like UCF could have a chance in a playoff?
Yes. Very quick. I would have an 8-team playoff.
That's what we think,
Yeah.
For the same reasons you think, but probably for different underlying reasons, which would make a lot of people really mad at me.
Right.
Which we can talk about another day.
But over the top.
Oh, no, let's throw that out there now.
But over the top.
We'll tease something from three months from now.
You know what it's like? It's like a picket fence.
Yes. Or that picket fence analogy is like the anaconda squeezing
with
the life out of the shell.
With an anaconda laying on top of the picket fence.
There
How
you
about
go.
that?
Well, then the picket fence would fall apart.
Yeah.
That would be one terrified picket fence.
Yes.
That's exactly right. Not so much a terrified anaconda for being on the picket fence. Trevor, we appreciate it. Thanks
file
so
down
much.
the tips, though.
We've got all kinds of issues. Coming up, the best turnaround in recent sports memory, and it could lead to big changes in college football. Next on Golic and Wingo.
Hey everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for the Golic Wingo podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS consumeraccess.org number 3030.
Well, as we continue here on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance, and all phone guests join us via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Those were the words of Scott Frost, who at that time was still the head coach of UCF. Now he goes on to the University of Nebraska. But you know what? I don't think you can talk enough about not only the season UCF has had and the job Scott Frost did there, but the turnaround for this team. And Mike, he nailed it. Look, they beat Auburn. Auburn beat both Georgia and Alabama. And a lot of people said, well, UCF doesn't even deserve to be on the field with Auburn. Well, they proved that they absolutely did, and they beat that team 34-27.
You know, and there are going to be the people that say, and I've said this, bowl games are a different breed at times. That's why when everybody started spouting the record of the Big Ten and the Big Ten, how can they not have a Final Four member with the record they have? I don't put bowl game records into all of a sudden you're the top conference around. You prove that during the season.
Because of the variety of motivational issues.
The different things that can happen. And there are those that say Auburn wasn't as motivated. And while some of that may be true, I will take nothing away from Central Florida for what they did. This is where they got, and they got to play one of the big boys, and they handled the big boy. So give them all the credit in the world. If or if Auburn was anywhere less than motivated, that's their problem. And I'm not going to sit here and say I know that for a fact. The bottom line is they had a game to play, and UCF was a better team yesterday. This is a team, gang, 2 years ago. Just 2, not 10 years, not 5 years. 2 years ago was 0-12. And they were losing by giving up scores of like 31, 46, 40, 30, 56, 52, 46, 44, 44. They scored under 20 points 10 times that year, under 10 points 4 times that year and 10 points on one of those times. So they were a bad football team that the next year they went and they won 6 games, enough to get to a bowl game, to which they lost to Arkansas State in the Automation Cure Bowl. How about that?
Sure.
Yeah. So they went 0-12 to 6 wins to now not losing a game. I mean, it's an incredible turnaround. It's a tribute to their coach, that staff, the players he got, and to get the players to buy in to what he was selling.
Well, to that point, I'm glad you brought that up, because people will say, well, they got better players. Yeah, they did. But there were 51 of the players on this undefeated team at UCF that went defeated 2 years ago. 51. That's a significant number. So did they get some new players and better players? Yeah. Absolutely. But coaching always matters. You had 51 guys at UCF that 2 years ago didn't know what it was like to win a game, and now they go and don't know what it's like to lose a game, and they take down an SEC powerhouse in the bowl game. You cannot say enough about the job that Scott Frost has done there.
No, you can't. And you also knew once he started doing that, he wasn't going to last there. That's the one thing, is everybody, it's like PJ Fleck at Western Michigan.
Yes.
When he started being successful, you knew that was going to be the hot candidate out there, right? And he was going to move on. It's a little more different when you look at, Fisher leaving Florida State to go to Texas A&M.
I mean, you're big.
And then there's different reasons behind the scenes there can be. But this is purely listen, UCF is not in the Power 5. You hit a glass ceiling as long as there's only 4 teams in the playoffs. You're not going to get there. You can go undefeated again next year. They're not going to get there. That's why none of us believe Lane Kiffin, even with the 10-year contract he
which
signed
we
at
asked him
FAU,
about yesterday,
is going to be there for 10 years. He may not be there for 2 more years. If he keeps being successful there, the Power 5s are going to come a-calling, and they will.
Right.
Even though he wasn't very successful when he was a head coach in a Power 5 at Tennessee, they're going to come a-calling, and he's going to leave, and he's going to take another. There's no way he's going to be there for 10 years, in my opinion. I don't know anybody that thinks he would be. So you knew this was going to happen. You kind of liked the way it happened, because even there at Central Florida, they knew it was going to happen. So it ended amicably, enough so where he coached them in the bowl game.
Yes.
He coached them in a bowl game through the first time ever an early signing period as well, to where he's got to try and sign guys for Nebraska during getting in preparation to play Auburn. All they wanted was a chance against the big boys. He gets it. He's got to start putting his staff together in Nebraska. He's got to do an early signing period for guys in Nebraska and get ready to play Auburn with his undefeated team. So you like the way that ended, amicable. The school was great to him as far as leaving, enough to let him coach this game, and he coached them to a victory. And as he said afterward, he didn't want to say anything during the season about it, but he feels they were disrespected. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to pick. It's UCF this year. It would have been Houston 2 years ago even if they beat UConn and went undefeated. They were 19th by the committee before that loss to UConn, and it was their only loss. So they wouldn't have been any higher than 12th had they won their last couple of games. It's just not going to happen. So we either just understand that, say it's never going to happen unless a UCF or a Houston opens up, like Houston last year beat Oklahoma in their first game.
Right.
But then they lost 3 games, so it didn't matter. But that's what these teams are going to have to do. They're going to have to play those big teams early on in the season and try and get those bigger wins to at least set themselves up that they got that big one. But for the most part, they're not going to be there until the system changes.
And hopefully that system will change. I don't know if it's going to be happening anytime soon, but I think it will be happening. But one of those players that went through this sort of roller coaster ride for UCF is Shaquem Griffin. And this was Shaquem Griffin after the game and after the win over Auburn on the field.
I come from a guy who lost it all, who lost every single game, and to come back, losing it all to winning it all. You can't ask for more than that. I mean, I'm thankful for this. Look at UCF fan base. We can't ask more for that. I remember when there was only 3 people in the stands, and now you got UCF still rocking at the end of the game. I mean, I'm just thankful for everybody.
And for people that don't know his story, first of all, he's the twin brother of Shaquille Griffin, who is now a starting cornerback for the Seattle Seahawks. And yes, he started because there were a lot of injuries to the Legion of Boom, but he has a bright future as a cornerback for the Seahawks in the NFL. Shaquem is his twin brother, 60 seconds younger. Now, the story there is remarkable. For people that don't know Shaquem, he plays football at a very high level with one hand.
One hand.
He has no left hand. He was born with an issue that eventually had to have that hand basically taken off and removed. And the story goes that Shaquille, who is now in the NFL and playing for the Seahawks, he had a dream. He always wanted to play for the University of Miami. That was his goal. He wanted to be a University of Miami Hurricane. He was offered a scholarship by the University of Miami, but he said, I will only go if you also give my brother Shaquem a scholarship. And Miami said, well, we can't do that. We're not going to do that. So Shaquille said, that's fine. I'm not going to go. So he turned down his dream of playing at Miami to go play with his brother. Mm-hmm. And the two of them went to UCF. They both were on that squad that were on 2015 that didn't win a game. And they both played together last year on the squad that won 6 games and went to a bowl game. And Shaquille stuck with his brother. They both got scholarships at UCF. And I'm telling you, Shaquem Griffin is going to get drafted.
He's a good player.
He is going to get drafted. It is a remarkable story of perseverance and will and want to. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't just a player. He was a very good player this season for Central Florida.
He was,
it really is a remarkable thing.
Great story.
6'2", 229-pounder. He's recovered 3 fumbles. He's intercepted a pass. He intercepted that pass with 0 functional hands, by the way. It's just ridiculous. He was the All-American Defensive Player of the Year, All-American Athletic Conference, the American Athletic Conference Defensive Player of the Year. So the next time someone says you can't do something, think about
Look
this
at this
kid.
guy, how he can.
And by the way, kudos to his brother also for turning down the dream of his life to go there and say, no, I'm going to play. I want to be with my brother. It's a great story.
It's a great story.
It's one of the many great stories that have come from UCF. And quite frankly, I look forward to the day in April, whether it's on a Thursday night, a Friday night, or more likely sometime on that Saturday, where we hear Shaquem Griffin's name called in the draft. It'll be one of the great moments of the draft, and it was a great moment for him last night. So congratulations to UCF. Congratulations to Shaquem, and we look forward to seeing what happens both with the program and Shaquem at the next level. All right, coming up, our NFL front office insider Louis Riddick will help us sort out the coaching searches and preview Wild Card Weekend. Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio, ESPN2.
Darius Rucker, also known as loser in our fantasy football.
One of many losers.
That's right. There's 11 people, only one winner. It was my wife. The rest of us were losers. Golic and Wingo, presented by 100flowers.com, starting off the year with a little romance is easy at 100flowers.com. Right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for just $29.99, you get another dozen absolutely free. You want to order? Go to 100flowers.com/ESPN.
All right, we are Golic and Wingo. Lots to get to. Louis Riddick joins us, our fine NFL front office insider, former safety and former director of pro personnel for Washington and Philadelphia. You know, we were just having this conversation in the Twitter segment, so I want to get your thoughts on it. I believe Baker Mayfield's going to be the swing draftee. I mean, he's going to be the guy in the first round that's either going to be we love him or we hate him. There's going to be all that controversy about him. Forget the flag waving and the grabbing of certain areas and all that stuff. Yeah. Straight X's and O's. What is your analysis right now of Baker at the next level?
Look, I think the thing that's going to scare people, let me just start there about Baker, is, look, he doesn't have all the ideal measurables, so therefore, if he doesn't pan out, people will not feel as though they have the safety net that they would have if they were looking at a guy like Josh Allen, let's say in particular, right? Because that's what scouts tend to look for. They tend to look for, if my guy doesn't work, how can I then say, well, it really wasn't me, it was something that he didn't do to utilize all his physical skills.
Self-preservation first.
Absolutely. I mean, that, because it's a league of survival many times, and I get that. You know, I've done that myself. But I'll say this about Baker Mayfield. If you watch his tape during the regular season, this is a guy who I don't think will have any problem transitioning to a pro-style, quote-unquote, passing attack, because he's a guy who spread the field laterally and vertically. He could throw the ball at all 3 levels very accurately. And if you watch him last night, still within the context of their offense, now he didn't have one of his best games. No. His interception there in the second half was one of those where you go, that's not something you saw him do a whole lot during the regular season. But I think he's going to be a fine quarterback. I think he's going to be a very good quarterback. I think he needs, like every other quarterback though, Baker's going to need to go to someone. Obviously, whoever picks him is going to like him. Whoever picks him has to understand that there are going to be some limitations because of the fact that he is a little bit shorter. So you have to make sure that your guard play is very strong, your pocket play is very strong, and the chemistry between him and his quarterback coach, him and his offensive coordinator has to be where you need it to be. You have to be willing to understand that he's a fiery player who's going to be someone who's a little bit, you know, on the edge, who plays right up to the edge. But I think how he will transition to the NFL, like that throw that you're seeing right there on the field, rolling left, getting your shoulder square, hitting and throwing a laser in the back of the end zone.
You see those flowers.
You see those all the time in the NFL, don't you?
Yeah, you do.
So I mean, he's gonna be just fine. But there's going to be a lot of talk about him. There's going to be some things you're going to have to find out about him and make sure that you're comfortable with. But I think he's a much better passer than what Johnny Manziel was. I don't like that comparison at all.
We were just about to ask you that. So
I completely agree.
That's not even a valid
I completely agree. He's going to have to be better than a fine player if you're drafted in the first round, though, for sure. And to me, I think he missed when the windows got tight last night in the second half. He missed him.
Yep.
And we always talk about Big 12, their bigger windows, and I've always brought up, name me the last Big 12 quarterback that's done anything in the NFL. And you want to say it's a bad rap, that's fine, but name me one that goes into the NFL and hits the tighter windows. Now, I know everybody thinks Pat Mahomes is going to be that guy.
Right.
We're going to have to wait.
He looked good Sunday.
He did.
And you know what?
And we're going to have to wait and see, but Baker just missed enough of those last night that gave me a little bit, because I love everything about the guy, and I hope he does well in the NFL. I love his fire. I love his passion, but that just gave me a little bit of pause last night.
Yeah, but on the flip side, Mike, I'd say this: during the regular season, I saw him hit enough of those throws to where it doesn't concern me. And maybe last night was just one of those where, look, he wasn't that sharp. When Jared Goff came out of Cal, a lot of the windows that he was throwing into weren't exactly super tight windows, but Jared was very, very smooth, very efficient within that Cal offense. And now that he's in an offense where, I'll tell you what, a lot of the windows that he's thrown into now at L.A. aren't very tight either, because the scheme of the offense is such that right now Sean McVay is operating on a whole new level. Mm-hmm. And right now offensive play is at a whole new level than defensive play. Offensive play right now I think is a step or two above defensive play in the NFL easily.
I agree. Right. And I think the offensive now in the NFL will help a guy like Baker Mayfield be more successful.
There's no doubt.
NFL.
Because you know what? A lot of that talk about the windows being so much tighter in the NFL. Okay, well, I could show you about 15 or 16 defenses that the windows I could walk through. I could drive a truck through. There's plenty of wide receivers who are running wide open, because defensive play is not the same as it used to be when we played. It's just not. It's very passive now. It's very soft.
And it has to be, or guys lose money.
That's right. And you know what? So that's why I think a lot of those old concerns about what quarterbacks will need to do once they get to the NFL, I think a lot of that stuff gets overblown now. And what it is, it's people trying to say, look, I'm not sure about a guy, so I need to point to a few things that may be a concern for him. I'm not really that concerned about Baker.
All right, Louis Riddick with us. We got a minute left in this segment, and we're going to hold you over to the start of the next hour. But real quickly, where does Baker fit in terms of quarterbacks that you think will go in the draft? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where do you think he is?
Yeah, I mean, I think the guys with the idea of measurables, look, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen, those are going to be the people who, measurable wise, are going to have everybody most excited. If Sam Darnold actually comes in the draft, it'll be those three probably at the very top. Although Josh Allen, look, I'd be scared to death if you watch his film. You tell me who you would want between him and Baker Mayfield.
You want to talk about a difference of watching his play, but looking at him,
and that's what it's going to come down to. But look,
he looks like
Trey. He's in that group of 4.
Right.
So it's just a matter of where and what people are willing to accept in terms of risk.
And that's going to be the big thing going forward. I always like to say we should have one draft at the end of the season and see how it compares to the draft that comes up after the Underwear Olympics and everything else. Yep. All right, Louis is staying with us. We'll discuss head coaching options. Plus, we'll talk to the recently retired Bruce Arians. Stay with us.
Attention shoppers, clean up on aisle 14. Clean up on aisle 14. Someone dropped a jar of pickles. Pickles. Kosher pickles.
Beatboxing at a big box store. Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
A red minivan has the lights on in the parking lot.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Geico.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like I'm on top of the world.
Disclaimer, you will not be transported to the top of the world. In the unlikely event you find yourself at the Arctic Circle, seek shelter from the elements immediately to avoid frostbite and or hypothermia. Geico will not be responsible if you find yourself in a cave or crevasse with a lonely abominable snowman, who in all likelihood will force you to play games including but not limited to Go Fish, Charades, Chinese Checkers, or his personal favorite, Red Rover, send Yeti on over. Geico is not liable for any damages, either physical or emotional.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Glad you're with us on this Tuesday morning. Trey Wingo, Mike Golic. Golic and Wingo, presented by Progressive Insurance. And all phone guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Those were the words of Bruce Arians to his Cardinals team after their unbelievable win in Seattle, the last-second win with a field goal, where he announced it was his last ever game, retiring at the age of 65 and 5 years as a head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. He'll join us in a little bit.
I look forward to that. Greeny and I sat down with him a couple of years ago in Arizona, and what a great guy to talk to. I mean, just an incredible guy. Forget just about coaching, but just about life, and on his staff, the age of some of the coaches that he has, is incredible. The experience.
Absolutely. Louis Riddick also with us in studio, and we'll get to Bruce in a little bit. But while Louis is here, we want to talk about, obviously, all the coaching moves that have gone on. Louis, is there one coaching position right now that you think might be the best out of all the available ones? Obviously, with the Colts, you have Andrew Luck there. With Cleveland, you have the first and the fourth pick. With the Giants, you have a legacy of what that franchise has been over the years, even though it stumbled this year. Do you see one job as better than the other?
Yeah, those are all great points that you make right there, Trey. And everybody would be attracted to different organizations for different reasons. But I think if you just look at it objectively and what some teams have in place already, I mean, you'd have to say either Detroit or Oakland are the two that people would be very excited to go ahead and get into because, one, of the quarterbacks and the relative youth that they have at that position. Two, with the Raiders, you have a lot of investment on the offensive line, especially at the center and the two guard positions. They need a tackle. They have perimeter playmakers. They have the makings of a decent run game. They really need a bell cow running back. And on the defensive side, you have to take care of Khalil Mack. You need to get some good linebacker play, and you need some corners. But I think the Oakland is set up nice. Detroit set up nice, too, obviously, with Matthew Stafford. They tried to invest in the offensive line. They need to find, they had Barry Sanders, for goodness sake, at one point in time. Find a running back who you can really say, look, if we need to, we can give it to you 25, 30 times. Because Matthew can't do it by himself. And on defense, take care of Ziggy Ansah. You have Darius Slay. Right. So there's a lot of great things. You have great ownership, great stadium, and in a division that's winnable. So I think those two divisions in particular, but all of them have, look, the Giants, it's one of the proudest franchises in the National Football League. They have a lot of work to do, but it's such a great legacy franchise that, man, and the Browns, all those draft picks, I mean, cap space, it's all of them have their pluses for sure.
In the bigger picture of things, if the reports end up being true and Gruden does go to Oakland, and I'm always for anybody getting all the money they can. If it's $10 million, great. But the ownership part, and take Gruden out of this, I make this a general question. Is that a slippery slope when you start giving a head coach stock in it? Now, first, it has to be approved by the other owners, and I would be stunned if that happened. But do you see it starting to go down that road? I mean, what kind of idea that would be?
I don't know if that's going to be a trend or not. I mean, that's what it tells you though is, and I think we've seen that this year, Mike, and is just how important and how much of a value people are placing on getting the guy that they want if they really do believe in it, because they believe that that's where it all starts. And if they have to go that far with it in order to entice the right person to come and coach for you, that they're willing to go that way. Look, and I circle back and I say this, I've said this numerous times. The difference between the LA Rams of 2016 and 2017 has to start with the discussion of what has Sean McVay done there that wasn't being done before.
Right.
How did he, when you talk about culture change and a mindset change, that guy literally went in there and kind of rebooted everyone's brain into thinking you're not perennial losers anymore. Todd Gurley, you are an MVP type quarterback. Jared Goff, you are worth the first pick in the draft. And I'll tell you, if you really believe that this is the guy, if it means giving him partial ownership, whatever it takes, I think I don't, from a business standpoint, I don't know if it's something that is sustainable.
Right.
If other owners are going to be willing to do that.
Sure.
But look, Mark Davis obviously believes very strongly, if this winds up being part of the deal, that John is the guy who can reboot that organization too and get it back going in the same direction it was when he was there the first time, which was in the right direction.
It certainly was. By the way, to your point about the Lions, they've gone 68 games without a 100-yard rusher.
That's incredible.
The last one to do was Reggie Bush.
That's almost as bad as going 1-31.
And it never, maybe not quite that bad.
Yeah. No, you're right.
They have been in the playoffs a couple of times.
I'm just saying relatively speaking.
Yeah, it's not great.
No, I got you.
Then the issue that came out yesterday I thought was really interesting. Ted Thompson, the GM of the Packers, is no longer the GM of the Packers. He'll be reassigned. Your thoughts on what's going on there?
Yeah, everybody's time comes to an end, and the Packers have a lot of people in their personnel department who have been there a long time, who are highly respected, who were trained in the quote-unquote Ron Wolf, Ted Thompson Packer way. And I think, maybe Mark Murphy and the people who are up there right now just feel as though it's time to kind of usher in a new wave of thinking. The Packers have kind of, they've kind of stalled out a little bit from a roster building perspective. I mean, they still have the great Aaron Rodgers, but the secondary has continued to be a problem. The offense has kind of stagnated outside of Aaron Rodgers' development, outside of his big playmaking ability. then maybe they just think it's time for a new voice there. And it's, I think the league needs some new, fresh ideas. Ted has had a long run. He's had a long, great, successful run.
From the standpoint of hiring head coaches, what should the time process be? I know it can be tough if you're looking at a guy who's in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But it's not just the head coach, it's the assistants he's going to go for. Is one guy going to go for multiple assistants that another guy might go for? So how should the timing be working here?
Yeah, obviously I think the quicker, the more prepared you are heading into it, Mike, and having an idea and an outline of who you want to go after, the better. I mean, obviously,
if he was sitting down with you a head coach interview, should he have that list ready to show you? This is who I'm
trying to get.
Right,
absolutely,
right.
And you can't. Yeah, and you have to have, just like you would do in free agency. Whereas if you don't get Coach A or Player A, you have to have B and C already lined up. And quite honestly, look, it's not something that necessarily people would be happy about, but you have to have been thinking about this for quite a while now, and have put the bug in people's ear for a while now. That look, if I am able to get in this position, are you willing to come, and are you willing to have me contact your employer and say, look, we're trying to get you? So yeah, as organized as you can be, January is a very, very busy month, for front offices. So on top of the fact that they're trying to get ready for the Senior Bowl and the Combine and all the other All-Star games and make a lot of decisions, look, the coach, whoever they hire, has to be ready to roll.
All right, so that obviously is going to be something that's going forward. And we could still have another opening. We don't know what's going on with Marvin Lewis in Cincinnati. They're going to take a few days and try and figure that one out, although Adam Schefter was reporting that it looks like Marvin was thinking about moving on. Then there's the Wild Card Weekend we got coming up. Yeah. And the great story, obviously, was the Buffalo Bills and making it into the postseason after that 17-year drought, longest active drought of any major sport in North America.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the Bills, because they haven't been enjoying this a lot, and they should.
Yeah.
How do we make that transition now to, okay, hey, it's great we're there, but we have a game to play, and it's going to be a very tough one against a very difficult Jacksonville team.
No question. Yeah, I think if anybody knows Sean McDermott, he'll turn them pretty quick. He'll get their attention pretty quick. He got their attention very quickly this year in his first year as a head coach. So, and I think they have some great assistants on that staff who have been in postseason play before. David Culley comes to mind, an offensive assistant coach who was a great wide receiver coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, who was there with Sean as well. So I think they understand that, look, the euphoria of getting in is great, but you're right. They are going into an absolute hornet's nest now as far as this defense that they're going to face here that can really, I think, poses their offense in particular a very, very bad matchup.
Especially if they don't have Shady McCoy. Hopefully his ankle will be ready to go. We'll see how that plays out later on in the week. But now we want to bring in someone. We're delighted to have him on the show today. He is now actually the former Cardinals head coach. Bruce Arians joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Bruce, first of all, thanks so much for being with us. Is it weird to hear yourself introduced as the former head coach of the Arizona Cardinals now?
Yeah, that really is. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but it was a very emotional day yesterday, but kind of calm this morning.
Well, what was it, Bruce, that we saw the clip of you talking to your team? Obviously, this was something you knew and thought about going into the game. What was it that made you come to the conclusion after a pretty successful run there in Arizona?
Really, it was all about family. You know, I said yesterday, my wife turned to me this summer and said, you know, Jake's going to be 40 this year. And I mean, it hit me so hard that how the hell could he be 40? And it was, I don't know, it was all about family. Really was. My wife is real a trooper, man. I mean, what she's gone through as a head coach's wife, and she had enough, and I had enough.
When did you know? When this year, this game, the 2 games in before the season started, that it was going to be the end?
I wasn't really sure. You know, all the plans were for her to go ahead and move back to as she puts our forever home, and I was going to stay here and coach another year. And until
it looks like we may have just lost Bruce there. Hopefully we'll get him back in just a second.
Yeah.
But you know, he's an interesting guy, and you know, he has his life philosophy is you know, no risk it, no biscuit, which I love.
He's a great guy to talk to, but I've talked to other coaches as well, and they reminisce and look back on the beginning of their career, and then when they get toward the end, of how much they've missed a family.
Right.
And there's just no way around it. I mean, with that coach's lies and the number of moves, do you have to go ahead while the wife and the kids, depending on if they're in school or not, have to stay behind?
Yeah, and thankfully we got Bruce back. So, Bruce, apologies, we lost you there for a second in your train of thought there. So, the new frontier for you is what? Because you have been a guy who's been all about the game and been very successful everywhere you've been with the game. How is this transition going to work for you?
Yeah, I'm kind of anxious to find out. I know I won't be totally retired. Thinking about possible what I could do in the media and learn and start a new career there, and just wait and see what opportunities are out there. And I know that I don't want to be a consultant or any of those type of things. I'll eventually visit the Jets training camp this year and hopefully the Cardinals training camp and have some fun.
Well, listen, we'd love to have you. So if you're in the media, we're always looking for people, Bruce. I'm just letting you know. We're always looking for folks at the Worldwide Leader. Little colder here than it is in Arizona right now, so just be prepared.
Yeah, I got to have a workout walking across that campus this summer.
Yeah, you will. Bruce Arians talking to us, the former Cardinals head coach. Looking at and this is with most coaches, it's incredible because you talked about, and I've worked with so many coaches who have talked about when they look back on it, the time at times they've missed with their family or how the years go by and all of a sudden the kids are grown, just like you said. All of a sudden you realize your son, there's no way he can be 40 years old. I'm looking at, you went to Virginia Tech. Your start into coaching was a GA in 75, and then the stops that you went to 14 different places throughout. Some you went back to the same place, but still a move to go back there. If some young 20-year-old, 22-year-old came up to you and said, Coach, I am so interested in getting into coaching right now. This is what I want to do. This is my passion that I want to do with my life. What would be the best words of wisdom you could give them?
The best words I ever got from our equipment manager at Virginia Tech. So you really want to coach? Build your house on wheels.
That's exactly right, because it will be mobile. It's
the greatest profession in the world. I don't think there's anything better to build relationships. I mean, quality relationships that last your entire life than coaching. And the bond you make with your players, your fellow coaches. There's no better profession, and there's no better profession than keeping you young than coaching.
That's interesting, as Bruce Arians is with us, because so many people talk about how much it wears them down. But you're right, being around those young players obviously puts you in a different frame of mind. And we talk a lot about Bruce these days, quarterback whisperers, guys that have worked really well with quarterbacks and have parlayed that into success. You might be the ultimate quarterback whisperer when you look at the guys that you've been able to work with over your career. Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Andrew Luck, in the last few years, Carson Palmer in Arizona. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some other ones. But when you see those first names come to mind, and your book is The Quarterback Whisperer, by the way, what is it about the ability to talk to those guys and get them to buy into what you're teaching them that sort of makes the whole thing work?
You have to build a line of trust. And I don't think that comes in the office. I think it has to come off the field and really becoming I never wanted to be a big brother or a second father. I always wanted to be a cool uncle you want to have a drink with. And you build that relationship so that when you speak to each other, you're telling the truth. You're not telling me what you think I want to hear. You're telling me what you're really seeing out there on the field.
Who were the guys your first after you were a GA at Vatech from 75 to 77? The first, when you were a wide receivers coach, running back coach, that's at Mississippi State. Started up in 1978 all the way through to where you are now. Who were the guys you looked to when you started your coaching career as trying to maybe mold yourself after, or who influenced you?
Oh, gosh. By far, Jimmy Sharp and John Devlin. Jimmy Sharp was my third head coach at Virginia Tech, and, he had been Coach Bryant's offensive coordinator for 10 years, and it was a very young head coach. But we were a bunch of ragamuffins, man. I was a quarterback and I was bigger than center and right guard, and we're running the wishbone. And every game that we went out there, we really believed we were going to win because of his positive influence on us every day. John Devlin, I wouldn't be anywhere without John Devlin. You know, I got kicked out of high school, and everybody that was recruiting me dropped me, and Coach Devlin stayed with me and got that scholarship to Virginia Tech, and it was a few years later that I was able to repay that debt and hire him as my assistant head coach at Temple.
Well, listen, it certainly has worked out for you, and I'm glad that Coach Devlin believed in you, and a lot of people now believe in you, Bruce, with the things that you've been able to do. Your life has been about coaching, but you had all kinds of. You were a bartender for a while, and it's sort of. There's been a lot of things that sort of made you the person you were. What were some of the life stories that you could share with us that people may not know about some of the early days with you?
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, back when I went to school, you got $15 a month for laundry money. That was the only money I had. My parents didn't have any money to send me to college with. And I worked as a bartender the entire time I was in school for $1 an hour, and all I could eat and drink. And it was a hell of a job. Yeah. But when you sit across the bar from someone, I wanted to be a guidance counselor because I love reading people and listening to people, not talking to people, just listening. And you learn more about people as becoming a bartender than I think anything in the world.
You probably get 3 credits for that.
A lot of schools
doing that. So you take that. So your first head coaching job is 83 with Temple. Now, I know it's college and pro, but you're still the head coach. The first time you're running a program. Today, I know you were an interim head coach with the Colts, but then the next head coaching job, pure head coaching, was with the Cardinals in 2013. So from 83 when you were first-time head coach to 2013 when you were that head coach again, what were some of the biggest things you learned and maybe did differently from that head coaching point?
The biggest thing I learned from Temple, which it's amazing how close all those guys still are. I mean, when we come to Philly or Washington, I have 15 to 20 Temple guys. I can't wait to go to Cherry and White this year to see all those guys because they're so close. But I learned how to delegate. At Temple, I was the head coach, the quarterback coach, offensive coordinator, recruiting coordinator, fundraiser, and by 35, I was in the hospital twice a week. And literally almost killed myself with that job.
Wow.
And I learned to delegate. And then when Chuck got sick and I got the job at Indy to take over, I say, just everybody do your job. I'll just decide if we're going to go for it on 4th down. That's about it. I don't give big speeches on Saturday night. And those guys can testify to that. But just do your job. And I learned that if I ever got an opportunity, I could call plays, which I love to do. I would get out of the game if I had to give up play calling because that's the most fun in the business. And I said, this can be done. Trust your staff, trust your guys to do their job. And I think that goes with all businesses. Don't micromanage anymore.
Well, look, no one dialed up a lot of big plays better than you over the years, whether it was with Ben or Peyton or with Carson over the last few years. Speaking of that, one of those guys that you've counted on as Bruce Arians is with us talking about his recent decision to retire, someone else may be making that decision sooner rather than later, and that's Larry Fitzgerald. Look, he is an ageless wonder. He continues to produce at a very high level. Do you think he's coming back for one more year?
Yeah, I think it all depends who's the head coach. Who's calling the plays? Do they know how to? He can still play, and if the right person's there and knows how to get him to the game on Sunday, don't overwork him in the spring and training camp because he can still play at a very high level. And the one thing I'll say about Larry, before you ever talk about him as a player, he's one of the greatest human beings I've ever known.
Oh, yeah, there's no question about that.
No doubt about that. Bruce, last one from me is you've been in this game a long time. Do you enjoy the game of football the way it's being played today? What do you think of the game today?
Well, it's different. I think the quality of the game has dropped dramatically, technically, how to block, how to tackle, how to play football. But the quality of the athlete is so great, it's saving the game. And, line play is almost non-existent. because they never get to practice. They never get to practice playing how to play an offensive line and defensive line anymore.
Well, you're right, and we see that a lot, especially with the draftees that come from that spread offense in the college game, where they're basically in a 2-point stance the entire time, as opposed to getting their hand in the dirt and trying to run people over. That has been a big shift, and that's something you can only work with what you got. Bruce Arians with us. Bruce, we appreciate you being with us. I want to let you go on this note. I don't think people know that you, not Michael Vick, have the single-season record for most rushing touchdowns in Virginia Tech history. You had 11 in one year, and Michael Vick's best year was 9. That's got to be a feather in that Kango cap that you wear all the time, correct?
It's amazing. Steve Keim was talking to his kids the other day who are young football players. And, Coach still has a record, and Mike Vick couldn't break it. And they said, wow, Coach must have been really fast.
And I just ran the wishbone. Well, it's a different way to attack. But again, like the lineman.
Never handed off, never pitched inside the 10.
There you go. You were a big guy. You could bowl people over. Bruce, it was our pleasure to watch you coach, and we look forward to whatever's next for you. Thanks for being with us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Bruce Arians, one of the best. One of the best.
And I tell you want to be a coach, and this is kind of a model of what you will see if you coach, especially for as long as he did. This is all it stops. Let me take a big breath. Virginia Tech, Mississippi State, Alabama, Temple, Kansas City Chiefs, Mississippi State, New Orleans, Alabama, Indianapolis Colts, Cleveland Browns, Pittsburgh Steelers, Indianapolis Colts, Arizona Cardinals.
Build your house on wheels. That's
all
what he
those
said.
stops. And as he said, as you just heard him say, the thing that got him the most, there's no way my son is turning 40.
Yep.
With the realization of, wow, how time flies.
Same thing with Joe Gibbs. He leaned over to give his son a kiss, and he realized my son has a beard. When did that happen?
Hey everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for the Golic Wingo podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
Rolling through a Tuesday morning with you on Golic and Wingo. Glad you're with us. Trey Wingo and Mike Golic. We are on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. Tom Rinaldi is going to join us in just a few moments to talk about that epic showdown at the Rose Bowl between Oklahoma and Georgia. And because it happened at the Rose Bowl, Mike, it seems like we've had the best bowl games over the last 10 years, maybe.
Yeah,
this the Rose Bowl
game last night broke a record for points from last year's game,
right?
Which was this year was 102
USC Penn
points.
State game was crazy.
Last year was 101 points. So yeah, I mean that's pretty wild.
And then of course there was the 2005 national championship game between Vince Young and the Texas Longhorns against that USC team, which was loaded with Leinart, Bush, Lendell White, all those great players on that team as well.
Yeah, I agree. There's one thing, if I'm going to sit there and get a little technical on is, and listen, I love these guys, Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, what they did in running the ball last night and the yards they gained and the
total number.
They combined, I talked about the combined points, but Michel ran for 181 yards, Chubb ran for 145 yards. Georgia became the sixth team with multiple 100-yard rushers in a single Rose Bowl, the first since Oregon in 2012. But here's the thing. Most combined rush yards by teammates, duos in FBS history, is now Nick Chubb and Sony Michel at 8,284 yards. So they just passed Eric Dickerson and Craig James, 8,193 yards.
Which is great, but...
It's great, but... Now they count bowl games as in your official regular season stats. And obviously when Dickerson and James played, they did not do that. So to me, that's a little unfair.
Right.
To me, and you could easily do it, go back and if anybody played in bowl games, add their stats. Instead of saying that Nick Chubb and Sony Michel are now the top, go back and let's see. Dickerson and James, they play in a bowl game together. What did they rush for? What yards did they have? That should add to it because that to me that's a little unfair.
Well, it is interesting because that's sort of there's a line in the sand that sometimes we cross with stats that doesn't make any sense. This would be one of those. The other one is when you talk about Super Bowls as opposed to NFL titles. Okay, because they're basically the same.
There were
thing.
championships before the Super Bowl. They just named it.
It was just called something else. So when you talk about the highest point total in Super Bowl history, Super Bowl 24, San Francisco 55, Denver 10. Yeah, but the 1941 NFL championship game was 73-0, the Bears over Washington. So while I get it, it wasn't called the Super Bowl. It was still the game to determine who the NFL champion was.
Right.
And that's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, exactly right. It's exactly right. People seem to forget about actual NFL championships. If it doesn't have Super Bowl and a number before it.
Yeah, a lot of football was played before 1967.
And again, it sounds like, it's old, taken away from I love what these guys are doing, but you have to admit, it's just not fair.
Right.
They have beaten Eric Dickerson and Craig James by less than 100 yards, and they didn't get to include their bowl games, and these guys do. So, I mean, I think I'm kind of stating the obvious. It just doesn't seem too fair.
It just seems like it's an easy fix.
I would completely agree with that.
Let's just go back, look at the bowls. I mean, what would prohibit someone from going back and just doing some math?
Yeah, that's all it is. And it's not difficult math.
And
it's just addition.
We're not taking away anything from Sony Michel and Nick Chubb. We're not doing that.
We are not. But it's simple addition for Dickerson and James. Are they really not still the best duo if they ran for more yards and include the bowl game?
Right.
I mean, come on.
Well, it's like the knock. How many Super Bowls have you won? Well, there's the Steelers have 6.
Yeah.
And the Cowboys and 49ers and Patriots all have 5. What about all the Packers? NFL?
Yeah, how many do the
Packers with the NFL championships?
Yeah.
Which were just like literally 1 or 2 years before the Super Bowl.
Exactly right.
A lot of the same players were in the same thing.
It just wasn't called a Super Bowl.
They just didn't have a name for it.
Very true.
Point.
Very true.
But it was a fantastic game.
Yeah, listen, it was a great game. I'm looking forward to the national championship game. We're looking forward to being down there. This is going to be a team in Georgia. Again, they're a 4-point underdog. The Dogs are in this game. And I get it. I think Alabama should be favored. Georgia's going to want to run the ball, but it's very difficult to just line up and run the ball against Alabama. So they are going to need this true freshman. Again, when you start talking about a quarterback, when you say, last winter he was playing in some high school all-star game, and all that, you're like, wow. And what they've gone through and what he has been able to do through the year and how much it can be on his shoulders for this next game.
Well, we enjoyed watching it. And, of course, we're joined now on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line by someone who was there, our Tom Rinaldi. Tom, this game was epic to watch. What was it like to be on the field, especially in that second half, seeing Georgia rally from 17 down and then the whole thing go back and forth to double overtime?
It was incredible. One of my favorite moments actually happened back-to-back in the first half when after Oklahoma had scored its second touchdown, Baker Mayfield shouted to me on the sideline. I was on the OU sideline, guys, and he actually shouted, Tom, no one's ever done that at any sideline I've ever covered. He said, Tom, go and tell them good luck over there. Then they scored again. He shouted to me, did you go and tell them yet? Obviously, there weren't as many shouts in the second half, so many momentum swings. It was just absolutely an incredible game to witness and be on the sideline for.
So along those lines, and I get that in the beginning, and you were right there, and that's what we love. You can tell us what was going on the sideline.
It's a great story, by the way.
That is a great story, but then how was he in the third quarter when they were 3 and out, punt, and then lost the lead? What was the mood then?
Well, Golic, I think you can speak to this. And I'd be very curious, certainly Mayfield downplayed it, but when you saw him get kneed in the back, there was no flag there shouldn't have been. The defender got pushed into him. I really think that shook him up for the rest of that series and the next series. And that was in the midst of the great momentum shift that we saw from Georgia. I thought that was a part of the game that maybe changed things more than was apparent for OU. But then the scoop and score, the momentum switched back, and you really thought, I know I did, 55 seconds to go. OU gets the ball back. They're going to get down at least at the field goal position and have a chance to score. But the Georgia defense made the key adjustments that we've seen Kirby Smart make when he was at Alabama, and that, of course, set us up and sent us into the 2 overtimes.
Absolutely. As Tom Rinaldi joins us on the phone, he was on the field for the Rose Bowl, and we appreciate him scooping out a few seconds for us as he's getting ready to fly somewhere. Tom, the other thing I thought was really interesting in that game is all the attention for a lot of reasons was on Baker Mayfield, a Heisman Trophy winner, a little controversial with some of the things that have happened around him. How's he going to play? But just watching the freshman, the true freshman for Georgia, Jake Fromm, handle that stage and do the things necessary to put his team in a position to win, that was maybe the story that might be most impressive in this game and the thing that people aren't talking about enough.
Trey, in the production meeting that happened before the game, Chris Fowler asked Fromm, when's the last time you were uncomfortable? And there was a lengthy pause in the room. And Fromm ultimately said, I really can't remember.
It's a good answer.
If that didn't manifest in the game, I don't know what else did. He was incredibly unflappable. I mean, just to stand on the sideline and go through the emotional swings was remarkable. Yet he was so flatlined, and I think he really takes that cue from his head coach. If you saw Kirby with Maria, right after the game was over, Kirby was very flatlined, which I thought was remarkable. But you saw Fromm make the checks at the line. His mastery of the offense, guys, for a true freshman, let alone his composure, shined and was a big reason why Georgia is going to play for the title.
Yeah, title against Alabama. So you just we have a week before, but just quickly on that, you being around, these teams, what's kind of your instant first thought when you saw that was going to be the matchup?
Well, listen, my instant thought, to tell you the truth, is I kind of hope we don't get a game like we got the last time we had two SEC games in the title, right, which was Bama LSU. Simply because it was such a difficult game for LSU. They could barely get the ball past the 50. Obviously, we're going to hear a lot about, Saban and Smart, and we're going to hear a lot about master pupil. But to me, I think, and especially for you, Golic, if you like play at the line of scrimmage, this is your game. I think you're really going to see a tremendous fight in the trenches in this football game. And there are going to be a couple of chunk plays that are going to decide it.
Well, we were talking about that earlier, right, because it was the defensive line of Alabama that just snuffed the life out of that Clemson offense, and that's what Georgia's offense likes to do, wear people down. So that's going to be the fun part going forward. Which line will wear the other one down first? Will it be the Alabama defensive front seven, or will it be the Georgia offensive line with so many of those big runs? Tom, we know you're busy. We know you're traveling. We appreciate you spending a few minutes with us this morning.
Thanks, Tom.
I just have to really quickly just say, what a thrilling game. Just an incredible game to witness and be a part of. I hope it was as thrilling watching from the absolute bitter cold than it was from the beauty of Southern California. I had to get my shot in.
The fireplace was working, Tom.
Yeah,
we'll just leave it at that.
Thanks for that, Tom.
Travel safe, and I hope you have an aisle seat now. All right, Tom Rinaldi with us.
He has a middle seat now.
Well, 15J's not bad.
Yeah. Listen, I thought it was very entertaining, but the former defensive player in me really, that was a tough one to watch from the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, some linebacker adjustments that Oklahoma would like to have back. No question about it. All right, coming up, the one that will tell you who's going to win the national championship game. That's next. Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio, ESPN2. Little Prince in the background for that one. And don't forget the Will Cain Show also debuts today on ESPN Radio and ESPN News from 3 to 6 p.m. as we are Golic and Wingo wrapping up a Tuesday morning. Okay, we sort of teased this. The one thing that will define the national championship game between Alabama and Georgia, we think.
Yes, we think. So here's the setup. Georgia head coach Kirby Smart was an assistant coach under Nick Saban at LSU in 2004 and at Alabama from 2007 to 2015. This will be the 12th meeting between Saban and a former assistant coach. The other 11 times, Saban is 11-0. Not only 11-0, but winning the game every one of those games by at least 14 points.
And let's break it down by assistant, okay? Former assistant Jim McElwain, 0-3 against Saban. Former assistant Derek Dooley, 0-3 against Saban. Former assistant Mark D'Antonio, 0-2 against Saban. Former assistant Will Muschamp, 0-2 against Saban. Jimbo Fisher, 0-1 against Saban. Does Kirby have the smarts to break that trend?
Well done. We will see. Listen.
It's really interesting when you lay it out like that.
Initially, right off the bat, I'm going with, and I don't know what's going to change my mind. We'll see with the injury, but I don't know if that's going to even do it with Anthony Jennings as well. We've seen them all play. I don't think a whole lot's going to change this week. I'm picking Alabama. I rarely will go against Alabama or New England.
You were proved right last night.
Yeah. I'm Alabama is a 4. Quite honestly, I thought they'd be a bigger spread. I was surprised. I'm not going to lie. I'm surprised it was only 4 points. And I'll mention it again. Alabama has been favored in 110 of their last 111 games. The one time they weren't was back in 2015, a game in Athens against Georgia.
So that's good news for Georgia.
They were a 1-point dog. Alabama won the game 38-10.
That's bad news for Georgia.
That's bad news for Georgia. So I am initially, and we have all week to talk about it, obviously, even up to, and we'll be in Atlanta doing the show from the stadium on Monday. I just think Alabama will be better. Georgia will not be able to just line up and run, even though they have 2 excellent backs and a really good offensive line. A lot's going to fall on the shoulders of the freshman Jake Fromm to back that defense off a little bit, prove that he can hit over the top a little bit, and give that running game a little bit of breathing room. We'll see if he can do it or not. But I look forward to the matchup. I don't care that it's SEC versus SEC. I'm tired of hearing all the people complaining and moaning about the fact there were 2 SEC teams in it. It's 13 people picking it. Don't blame the media. Don't blame, past outcomes. These are 13 individuals who made the choices, okay? They made these choices. To me, and I think you agree, you think the ratings are going to be just as good.
I think they'll be fine.
I think the ratings are going to be just fine. We're going to hear all kinds of people, I'm not watching anything, and then come Monday night, they're going to turn it on, and they're going to watch it to see what happens. I'm looking forward to the game. I don't care if it's 2 SEC teams.
Well, look, at the end of the day, we always talk, like, for example, in NCAA tournament, we love the upsets. Well, the year George Mason made it to the Final Four, no one watched.
Yeah, nobody watched.
We like upsets the first couple of weeks, and then we're like, give me chalk.
Yeah.
Give me Kansas. Give me Duke. Give me North Carolina. Give me those teams. So we can say, and look, maybe we'll be proven wrong, but I think history suggests we have a team like Georgia and Alabama in the title game people are watching.
I do think a lot of people wanted to see Baker Mayfield against Alabama and this Alabama defense because of just Baker and what he is able to do. So from that side of it, I think nationally there might be some disappointment that you're not going to get the Heisman Trophy winner against Alabama like you had last year. So we'll see. We'll see how this one goes. I like my early prediction is going to be Alabama.
Yeah, I'll hold off on my prediction until Monday in Atlanta. But the team that played better in the Rose Bowl won. That was the bottom. They made more plays. They made
did
the block on special teams, which they've done a bunch, and they cashed in a touchdown. So they did their job. We'll look forward to that. Lots more about the NFL coming up later on this week in Golic and Wingo. Thanks for watching and listening this morning. Adios.
Bye.
I'm a robot vacuum cleaner, so yeah, I got 1 gig. I suck up dirt, so pardon my inferiority complex about Geico, who does so much more. Like, not only could they save their customers money on car insurance, but they got fast and friendly claim service too, and an award-winning mobile app. Plus access to licensed agents 24/7. Who am I kidding? I can't even do corners. Uh-oh, choking hazard.
Popcorn kernels.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.